Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Hello, everyone out there, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. And why, yes, I don't sound like Michael Spinella. That is because my name is Amy Johnson, and I will be your host for the next hour, sitting in today for Michael while he is out and about. Happy to be here for episode 255 of the Canadiens Connection podcast. And of course, I am extra happy to be in the studio once again with my co-host, who happens to be the editor-in-chief, founder, and president of Rocket Sports, Mr. Rick Stevens. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to have you here in the studio and sitting in for Michael this week. And this week, it's August. This is our first show of August. Yeah.
It's nuts.
Not so long before training camps are going to be opening. So we'll be talking about some of those stories and related to the Canadiens today. We're also going to be talking about good people and your good people, the Rocket Sports team. Yeah, they're all good people. The Hockey News, who we're associated with, they're good people. The Hockey Podcast Network, who carry our podcast, they're great people. Yeah, and we've got a really good person in our big topic segment, second segment. Really good person, NHL goaltender, as we continue our deep dive into goaltending. This is part 3. We had Marty Biron in part 1 talking about building a department of goaltending. In last week, we had Sean Richardson from FC Hockey talking about the Canadiens prospects, the goaltending pipeline. And this week, we're going to talk about what it's like, all about being a goaltender in the NHL with one of our favorite people in hockey.
One of our very favorite people in hockey. He's very good people. That's Mr. Charlie Lindgren, NHL goaltender for the Washington Capitals. Mm-hmm. And he's, of course, going to be joining us in the second segment. Very excited for you all to hear that interview. It's going to be a ton of fun. And in and around that, of course, in the first segment and third segment, we've got Habs news to talk about. We've got general hockey news to talk about. We've got a very interesting quote of the week this week that I think everyone will just be they'll be
memorable.
That will be probably the most replayed part. Sorry, Charlie, but it might be the most replayed part of today's podcast. You never know. But we've got lots of very fun things to go over with you today. It's going to be a really fun show. However, don't forget, this is an interactive podcast, and you can text us anytime, 24/7, 365, at the Rocket Sports text line. You can reach us there at 585-3-ROCKET. Again, that's 585-3-ROCKET. Send in your questions, your comments, your feedback, your whatever you'd like to say. And many times we end up reading your comments on the air in an upcoming episode. We're gonna read some of our fan feedback in segment 3 today. And so if you've got something you'd like to say, then toss us a text at 585-3-ROCKET. Also, be sure that you're following us on social media. You can, of course, follow us at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And yes, I'm still calling it Twitter.
X.
Twitter.
We're also on Threads if for those people that escaped X to go to Threads. We're there too.
There you go. At Habs Connection. And of course, you can visit our website, CanadiensConnection.com. All right, so let's start off with a couple of fun stories. It is August. It's official. I think it's the unofficial vacation month for the hockey world. It's usually one of the quietest months, and Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield are certainly all in on that concept, vacationing together down in the Bahamas.
Lots of pictures from Nassau with both Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki out on the golf course. My favorite photos that they post are the ones where they're wearing matching outfits, and that seems to happen.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, matching hats, matching shirts, matching shorts. That seems to happen often. So they're twins on the ice and twins in the off season as well.
Wow. I'm going to just not even comment on that.
All right.
In happy news, Rem Pitlick had some fun news recently, announcing his engagement to his girlfriend, Kayla.
Yeah, really nice. This happened on a paddleboard, apparently.
All right.
At Wazata Beach it's in Minneapolis. We'll call it Minneapolis. And on her Instagram, Kayla, his girlfriend and now fiance, where's her message here? Our paddleboard proposal wasn't caught on camera, but long story short, I said yes.
Oh.
So congratulations to them both. And a really nice picture on Instagram.
Very nice. Congratulations to Rem Pitlick and his girlfriend. Also, just a little bit of a tribute. On Friday, this past Friday, was Rocket Richard's birthday. And if he were still with us, he would have turned the ripe old age of 102.
Wow.
That's hard.
Incredible.
That's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
So, of course, a fitting time to remember Rocket Richard and all the great memories and history and legacies that he made and left with the Canadiens organization. As far as roster news goes, a couple of things happened this week. Alex Newhook arrived in Montreal, got to don the CH for the first time, step into the dressing room and have some photos taken. He seemed to be pretty excited about the whole thing.
He got a tour of the Bell Center, and as he was in the Canadiens dressing room, a tour, a fan tour, which happens all the time, happened to arrive in the locker room. And so he went over to meet some fans and to take some pictures with them. And he said, your first time here, my first time in the locker
dressing
room,
room, yeah.
as in the home locker room as a Canadian. One of his first tasks was to select a number. And so he said, I was wearing number 18 in Colorado. No, sorry, that number's been retired. He said, how about number 19? No, sorry. 16 available? No. So he settled on number 15, and that's going to be his number for the upcoming season. And but he just talked about all of the history in both the Bell Center and the dressing room being a real motivator for him. He also talked about how it's going to be much more convenient for his family. He's from St. John's, Newfoundland, and much easier to take a direct flight to Montreal rather than where he was in Colorado. So looking forward to it.
Before cottage season officially kicked off, Kent Hughes took care of one last bit of business, finally signing the final restricted free agent that was on the books, Jesse Ylonen. Now let's just all take a moment and just say it with me now. Jesse Ylonen.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Ylonen. Let's see if we're getting there. We're getting there. Jesse Ylonen signing his contract extension, a 1-year, 2-way contract, and before I let Rick chime in here, I will just say, if you'd like to hear my very frank opinion on what I think about this contract for Jesse Ylonen, then I invite you to check out this week's episode of the Press Zone podcast over at thepresszone.fm. Because I had some opinions about it, and they're not necessarily.
We can't air them on this show. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, that fortunately for our listeners and unfortunately for me, both of our shows are family friendly. So no, there is no swearing, but I do have some strong opinions on why other aside from the fact that I'm just glad he's back for another year, and he'll be playing hockey in the Canadiens organization. That's probably the only thing that I like about Jesse Ylönen's contract.
Well, we've been forecasting. We've been saying, okay, is this the week that Jesse Ylonen is going to be signed? And it was dragging on and on and on. And we speculated what could be the issue. And I think generally we were right. And again, we're guessing. However, I think it's a pretty good guess that it was all about whether this was going to be a one-way or a two-way contract, given the fact that the abundance of forwards that the Montreal Canadiens have, for whatever reason, Kent Hughes wanted to play hardball, and he won. He got a two-way contract, signed Ylonen to a two-way contract. The other part of this that is a bit of a surprise, that it's just 1 year. That we thought perhaps a second year might have been added, and that's where that one-way contract could have entered into the scheme, but didn't happen. And let's remind ourselves, Ylonen was a second-round pick, 35th overall in 2018. He's played very well in Laval. He is an NHL-ready player. His skating is above NHL caliber. He's got a tremendous shot, great one-timer. He was used a little bit on the power play, but we'd love to see him get much more opportunity. And I guess we'd like to see him in the lineup every night, given a responsible role to help build his confidence. And I think that's all he needs to reach his potential.
And I'll just make this point. He's waiver eligible this year. So the two-way part of this deal makes me very afraid that once again, the Montreal Canadiens are going to end up losing an early second round overall draft pick to a waiver claim because they're not going to make room for him on the roster. Additionally, baffled by the fact that they gave Harvey Pinard a one-way deal, and Harvey Pinard is still waiver exempt, so they can send him back and forth to Laval till their heart's content. And just last point on that is that I don't think anybody should be surprised at all. Harvey Pinard, he made the most of his opportunity, but he looked good in a very depleted lineup last year, depleted by injury, and to his credit, made the most of it. Harvey Pinard doesn't have a great shot. Harvey Pinard is a below-average NHL skater, but he's feisty, he works hard, he forechecks well, he gets in the dirty areas, and that impressed Coach Marty St. Louis. But all of that, and I think has some Habs fans, pretty excited for what they might see from Raphael Harvey Pinard this fall. But there might be a delay in him getting to the Canadiens. I would not be surprised, and fans should not be surprised if if the Canadiens make use of that, of him being waiver exempt, and he is sent to Laval to start the season. We will see how all of that works out. Speaking of another prospect, the Canadiens' newest top prospect, David Reinbacher, selected 5th overall at this past summer's NHL entry draft, was honored by the Swiss National League at a ceremony on Friday when he was named Youngster of the Year.
Now, maybe it's the translation thing.
In English, I don't love the name of that award, but okay.
So this was the very first annual Swiss Hockey Night. And it was a gala evening attended by 450 invited guests from sports and politics in Switzerland. And they handed out their hockey awards for the season a little late after the season happens, but nonetheless, a great award for David Reinbacher. He was there were two other nominees. I think they were both about 21 years old. So being 18 and winning this award, terrific for him. And this was a new trophy being called the Youngster of the Year. There was a couple of other awards, and surprisingly, there were familiar names. Winning the Goaltender of the Year award, that goes to Robert Mayer. Robert Mayer. Who's Robert Mayer? Well, he was signed as a free agent by the Montreal Canadiens and played 5 seasons for the Hamilton Bulldogs starting in the 2009-10 season.
Oh, I remember that
him?
name now.
Yeah. And put up some decent numbers for the Bulldogs. 5 seasons. The Bulldogs weren't very good at the start of the 2010s. Robert Mayer is now 33 years old, and he's been playing in the Swiss League for a number of years. So he won Best Goaltender of the Year, or Goaltender of the Year, and the MVP of the playoffs in the National League, in the Swiss National League. So nice to see a familiar name and two Canadians connections in this award ceremony in Switzerland.
You just couldn't resist on a week that I was hosting the show, squeezing in a "Where Are They Now?"
There you go.
Could you?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite segments.
All right. Let's switch gears a little bit and check in on our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Some Habs prospects and top prospects from NHL franchises all over the league were definitely on display for the last week as USA Hockey hosted their annual World Junior Summer Showcase in Plymouth, Michigan at USA Hockey Arena. A tremendous event. Rick and I, of course, can fondly recall when we used to attend this event every summer when it was held at Lake Placid. Just beautiful setting and in the Herbrooks Arena, and it's a really, really fun tournament. And it's now it's kind of settled now into a 4-team rotation that it's US, Team USA, Hockey Canada, and Finland and Sweden, who bring basically kind of a larger roster of prospects who could be competing to make the final cut for the World Junior roster at the end of the calendar year. And Rick, there were some definite standouts at this week's event, not just Canadiens prospects, but some other top prospects that really stood out as well.
For sure. And we mentioned the U.S. had 45 prospects there, I believe. So they were wanting to evaluate those prospects as they try to pare down their World Junior team for December. The Canadiens prospects on the USA squad were Lane Hudson, defenseman, and Jacob Fowler, goaltender, added at the most recent draft. Overall, the best players of the tournament for the U.S. squad had to be Lane Hudson. He was the best defenseman there. His skills, his elusiveness. He had 2 goals and 3 assists, and one of the goals was just shared widely on social media. Just an absolutely spectacular effort. But there was lots of comments on his defensive play and his competitiveness. And his coach, the U.S. coach, David Carl, this was a quote for him on the way that Lane Hudson defends. He said, "People want to talk about his play with the puck, but his angles and his edges, the way he controls people with his stick and feet, make him, I think, an excellent defender as well." Teammate Rutger McGroarty said about Lane Hudson, "He's got that dog mentality. He comes to work every single day. He's super competitive. He gets real angry if we lose. He's one of the most competitive people I've ever seen." So all great news about Lane Hutson. The other top player in this tournament had to be Frank Nazar. Frank Nazar led all players in the tournament with 8 points in just 4 games. He was described as a scoring chance machine throughout the week. And why are we talking about Frank Nazar? There's a Canadiens connection, I can tell you that.
Oh boy!
You remember last draft when there was a trade to announce, and the Montreal Canadiens traded Alexander Romanov and a 4th-round pick to the New York Islanders for a first-round pick, 13th overall. They then packaged that pick, that 13th overall pick, with a 3rd-round pick and sent it to Chicago for Kirby Dach. With that first-round pick, 13th overall, the Chicago Blackhawks took Frank Nazar. So there's always going to be that comparison to see whether that was worth it for the Canadiens to give up that 13th overall pick, Frank Nazar, and compare him to Kirby Dach. It looks good so far for the Canadiens, but Frank Nazar was out with a hip injury last year, but he just looked terrific so far, and he'll be playing at the University of Michigan, taking Adam Fantilli's spot as the top center on that powerful Michigan team. What about Jacob Fowler? He had kind of a slow start. I thought his best game was on day 2, and that's when USA was split into 2 squads. It was the USA Blue squad that was playing Finland. USA won pretty handily, 4-1. Jacob Fowler didn't face a lot of tough shots in this game, but he showed how he can. He's got great vision. He reads the play well. We heard that from Sean Richardson last week, and his ability to find the puck through traffic was in evidence there. And so a good showing. A solid showing for Jacob Fowler. We don't expect Jacob Fowler to be the number 1 goalie for the U.S. team at the World Juniors. That'll probably go to Trey Augustine. Yeah. But he's looking to be the number 2, and that'll be a great experience for him.
Absolutely. There is also tournament action happening right now. The 2023 Hlinka Gretzky Cup going on. And Canada has advanced to the final. They will be playing Czechia.
Nice. This is, we remember, this is in Czechia. The games were played in Czechia and Slovakia. The Hlinka Gretzky tournament is a showcase, and really for scouts, it's their first opportunity to see prospects that will be available in the 2024 draft. Good showing for Canada. I believe the only game they lost was to Finland in the round robin, and they advanced handily. They beat the Americans in the semifinal. They were down after the first period. I think it was 2-1, and ended up it was a blowout, and advanced to Czechia. And next week we'll tell you how that game turned out.
Absolutely. Just a couple of quick signings within the Montreal Canadiens organization at the AHL and ECHL level, both of which will more than likely affect Trois-Rivières more than anything. But Laval did sign an AHL contract for forward Nolan Yaremko. It is a 1-year, 2-way deal. You'll recognize that name. Yaremko was signed for just a handful of games at the end of last season. He played 12 games with Laval, scoring 2 goals and 3 assists. And prior to that, he had been in the U Sports league, playing for 4 years for Mount Royal University, and then that was coming out of the WHL, playing for the Tri-City Americans. So Yaremko again will be a depth signing for Laval. Most likely will spend time in Trois-Rivières.
A native of Spirit River, Alberta. Love that name.
Spirit River. The Lions themselves also signed a standard player contract at the ECHL level for a new defenseman, Marc-Antoine Pepin. And so just starting to stock up their roster at the ECHL level as well. So it's that quiet time of the season where, you get these kind of dribs
Filling
and drabs.
gaps.
Yep. September we'll see a bigger uptick as we'll get those finalizations coming through. But just a couple of names added to the rosters for Laval and Trois-Rivières this
But
week.
if you want to know about Canadiens prospects, where do you go?
THN.com/Montreal.
There you go.
That
One
is
place
one
for
place.
all your Canadiens news, prospects, wherever. Yeah.
Yeah. THN.com/Montreal. Myself and Chris G, of course, will have our continued coverage of the Laval Rocket and Habs prospects this coming season, but THN.com/Montreal is where you will now be able to find that coverage.
Terrific.
We talked, I did say at the top of the show that the quote of the week this week is probably going to be pretty, as you said, memorable. And we actually spoke about Rem Pitlick. No. Rem Pitlick.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. And his, now fiance, Kayla, at the top of the show. But there was... Kayla had a little more than just her wedding plans on her mind this week. As is normally the case when news hits that, something big happens in the personal lives of one of the players, you typically go and check their social media accounts to see if they've had anything to say, or their family members, or in this case, a new fiance had something to say. And Rick, you were, I think you were a little surprised to discover when you went to Kayla's Instagram account that she did, you said she had a beautiful picture and comment about her engagement to Rem, but... Eventually. But before that, there was a very long health tip that she wanted to impart to her followers on Instagram as well.
And in case you missed it...
I'm parked outside FedEx. I have a package to drop off. You probably can't guess what it is. You probably don't want to know what it is, but I'm going to tell you anyways. It's Rem's stool, aka poop. He is sending in a microbiome test. This is really something that he does annually.
Really?
I've done it myself through a direct-to-consumer company where they send you the kit to your house and then you send it in through the mail to the lab and you get your results back. I actually worked in a microbiome lab where I personally processed tens of thousands of samples, and I'm telling you, your poop is such an indicator of your health. I helped Rem collect the sample. For the longest time, even though I was working in a lab and really desensitized to it, I still was hesitant to do it myself, and I did it last November, and I'm going to do it again. I just want to reiterate that pooping is not shameful, but it just gives you kind of the empowerment to know how to make changes, whether it's your diet, your lifestyle, maybe taking a probiotic, all the different things that you can do to look and feel your best and perform your best if you're someone who is an athlete like Rem. And it's not just about the physical performance, but the mental performance as well, because the microbiome affects your body and your mind and your mood and all the things. So that's all I got.
That's all she's got.
It's a minute and 20 that will be the most favorited minute and 20.
Now, listen, this went on and on. It took up 5 reels.
Yeah, we cut this down.
Yeah, this was
massively.
3.5 minutes of her talking about empowerment. We're all about empowerment. That's the word she used. This was, a health tip, something that Rem does annually, apparently. We learned that. Something she worked with tens of thousands of samples. Times. Yeah. The family is interesting, and we know there's a lot of Pitlicks. Rem and Rhett, the brothers, the cousin Tyler. Rem's dad Lance Pitlick was a NHLer. Played I think 400 NHL, in the vicinity of 400 NHL games and plenty more at the AHL level. Rem's mom, Lisa, was a competitive gymnast and quite accomplished. She represented the U.S. internationally. When she was involved in gymnastics, she got into health and wellness and homeopathic medicine and herbal remedies. And apparently Rem was often sick as a child. So she talked to him a lot about his health and wellness and had him focus on that. And he's taken it to new levels, I guess.
And all joking aside, I give Kayla a lot of credit for going out. She's obviously a very smart young lady, obviously works in the science field with all of this experience that she's had in lab work and so forth. And I give her credit for wanting to impart this very personal information for her and Rem about a subject that, yes, usually makes most people squirm. It's not something you talk about all the time. And yes, I mean, the whole gut biology thing has been a very hot topic among health and wellness people for the last 5 or 6 years and longer. So I give her credit for all. The only reason I think that we chuckle is that's the last thing I think you expected to find when you went to just go see what she had to say about getting engaged.
The funny thing is that there was in her Instagram reel, and it may be expired by now, but there was five panels about this topic where she went on and on and on. And then the last panel, it said, in other news, and then there was the engagement picture, which was, I don't know, I found funny.
So it was just the timing of it all, I think. But, good for, we always do kind of tip the hat to any pro athletes who are willing to put their name and their face to any kind of initiative to help educate people about certain health and wellness or disease awareness and things like that. So good for Rem Pitlick that he's willing to not be shy about letting his fiance say, this is something Rem does. I hope he knew
about it.
Well, I hope so. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say that he had agreed to let her talk about it, but it's not one that we hear every day. That's for sure.
Quote of the week.
All right. Some other hockey news and notes. A little bit of an update. You remember, unfortunately for Danny Briere, his son Carson has been in the news more than once over the last number of years, not necessarily for positive reasons. And earlier this year had made headlines for an incident involving him and some buddies at Mercyhurst who found an empty wheelchair at the top of the stairs at a local bar and thought it would be a fun/funny prank to toss it down the stairs. All of that was caught on video. The young lady whose chair it belonged to had been carried downstairs by the bar manager to use the washroom. There was damages and so on and so forth. He'd been booted from Mercyhurst's team. So according to the Erie Times News, he has signed a new hockey contract, but it's not going to be in North America, Rick.
No, H19 Human A in Slovakia. Slovakia's elite league. But yeah, this is a big step down. He had a promising career, played 3 seasons in the NCAA. And the whole timing of this coming out just after Danny Briere was named as the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, and just a really ugly kind of situation, and now his career has been derailed somewhat.
Yeah. Good luck to him. We'll see how long he ends up having to stay in Slovakia, if his hockey career is able to restart itself through on and off ice work. But that's the latest on Carson Briere.
Maybe a spot for Alex Galchenyuk as well.
Oh, that's it's so unfortunate.
Yeah.
As much as it pains me to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins, because, if you're a new listener, then you won't know that I live in Eastern Pennsylvania and I grew up as a Flyers fan. So it's painful for me to talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. But Kyle Dubas has been he was hired he got let go from the Leafs, was almost within a week hired as the president of hockey ops for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but in the interim took on kind of an interim GM role while they did a general manager search. Well, they found a new general manager. It's Kyle Dubas.
Yeah, he said when he was hired as president of hockey operations that they would spend July recruiting someone and evaluating the GM position, and he just determined that there's no one better out there than he is for the position of GM. So he now holds the dual titles of president of hockey ops and general manager for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he said that they're in no real rush. They're going to reevaluate the GM position over the next few off seasons to ensure we optimize each section of the department. So that doesn't sound like it's a role he's going to be giving up anytime soon.
Speaking of the Flyers, I can say from my knowledge of the Flyers, Chuck Fletcher tried this and it didn't work so well. So we'll see how Kyle Dubas does with the dual roles. They'll be looking to see how well their team can improve under the oversight of Kyle Dubas as president of hockey ops and GM. But Elite Prospects this week put out a ranking and a list of which NHL teams have improved and which ones haven't.
So 2 episodes ago, that's Canadiens Connection, episode 253, the Athletic put out a list of most improved teams in the offseason. This is Elite Prospects. They have most and least improved teams in the offseason, and their stats, their data, and this is not one person's opinion. In both cases, they run analytical data and modeling to come up with the most improved and least improved. Elite Prospects comes to similar conclusions of the most improved, and number one on their list is Detroit Red Wings. Red Wings were also high on the Athletics list. Arizona Coyotes, number 2. Dallas Stars, number 3. Winnipeg Jets, number 4. And the Montreal Canadiens as the team that's in the number 5 spot for most improved. Now, they come to their model says that the Canadiens should have added, by their changes, 2.5 wins above replacement. So is this all about adding Alex Newhook? Elite Prospects says no. The same thing that the Athletics said. This all comes from deletions. And the names that they mention, Jonathan Drouin, Joel Edmundson. So moving those 2 players out in different forms is a big win for the Montreal Canadiens, according to the models of the Athletic and Elite Prospects.
Speaking of the Athletic, they had a different ranking out this week, ranking NHL teams by contract efficiency. Now, where Elite Prospects had the Habs ranked high here, I'm going to go out. I haven't read this article. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that they're not going to rank as high in this contract efficiency ranking.
This is a different measurement. Again, using a model to rank the net efficiency, rank the teams by their contract efficiency. The model's called net rating, with a number of inputs. And why is contract efficiency so important? Well, it's because the cap has been flat, more or less flat, for the last few years, and contract efficiency becomes much more important. We talked about last week, the Athletic reported on the 10 worst contracts in the NHL. Fortunately, the Canadiens weren't on that list. They were on the list a year ago, but they weren't. None of their contracts were on that list. Although Josh Anderson and I believe it was Brendan Gallagher's contract got honorable mentions. In this calculation, you should know that goaltending is excluded. Players on ELC are excluded, and players on LTIR are excluded. So for let's talk about the good first. Number one is the Florida Panthers, and that's the second season they got an A rating for contract efficiency. Second season that they've been number one in the league and got an A rating. Also getting an A rating was the Carolina Hurricanes. Colorado Avalanche in third with an A-. Boston Bruins, number 4, A-, and the stingy New Jersey Devils at number 5. The Canadiens, unfortunately, they are at number 26, so one of the worst with respect to contract efficiency. However, they were dead last year, so there's been, believe it or not, there's been improvement. And the Athletic says this bad contract efficiency all relates to bad cap management and poor contracts handed out by Marc Bergevin.
Like Brendan Gallagher's?
Well, they list a number of bad contracts: David Savard, Christian Dvorak, Joel Armia, Mike Hoffman, Josh Anderson, and yes, Brendan Gallagher. For the Canadiens, they say that things are moving in the right direction. They like some of the contracts that Kent Hughes has signed, including Sean Monahan, Kirby Dach, Alex Newhook, and Cole Caulfield. In their estimation, or in the estimation of the model as they run it, the worst contracts on the Canadiens are David Savard, Chris Weidman, Brendan Gallagher, Josh Anderson, Mike Hoffman, and Joel Armia. And also the Canadiens are saddled with a bit of dead money. That's $2.6 million of dead cap money. And 1.75 is when the Joel Edmundson trade was made with Washington, the Canadiens agreed to keep or retain 50% of his contract. So there's 1.75 million of dead money there. Also, this is the last year. It's hard to believe he's still on the Canadiens' books, but Carl Alzner, $833,000. This is the last year of dead money for Carl Alzner. We haven't heard that name in a while. So all of those missteps by Mr. Marc Bergevin have left the Canadiens in a little bit of cap trouble and contract efficiency. But the positive news is they're moving up, and that Kent Hughes seems to be moving the contracts in the right direction.
Thank goodness. Finally, in this segment, just want to mention a bit of sad news. Canadiens fans, of course, will be sad to hear that former Montreal defenseman Bob Murdoch has passed at the age of 76.
Yeah, Bob Murdoch played for the Canadiens for 3 seasons. He won 2 Stanley Cups in his first 3 years in the league. That goes back to 1970-71. He won a Stanley Cup in 1972-73. And yes, we send our condolences to his family.
All right. That is going to wrap up our first segment. So we are going to take a break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Still to come, we are going to tackle our question of the week. That's coming up in the third segment. So why don't you start thinking about that? We're going to ask you what NHL rule you would change if you got a chance to be commissioner for the day. Which NHL rule would you just carte blanche just change? We want to hear that. Be sure to drop us a message and a comment or a text about that. We're gonna get to some of your answers and so forth. You can leave those comments, of course, on Twitter or on our fan page on Facebook, or text us at 585-3ROCKET. But coming up next is what you don't want to miss for sure. That is our big topic segment, and none other than NHL goaltender Charlie Lindgren is going to be here in the studio with Rick and myself, and we are about to have a tremendously fun conversation with Charlie. You don't want to miss it. So stay tuned. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, KS. In West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In partnership with Hollywood Casinos at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 and over in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10-plus leg requisite for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/baseball terms.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, I'm Amy Johnson, your host for today's show. You can find me on Twitter, actually, at FlyersRule. Feel free to follow me there. And of course, with me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him at Rocket Sports on Twitter. We highly recommend that you do that because not only is that where you can find Rick on Twitter, but that is also the home base for all of our articles and podcasts that come out that appear on thn.com/Montreal, the Hockey News Montreal's team site. So be sure you're following at Rocket Sports. And of course, you can follow at Habs Connection, this podcast, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit our website, CanadiensConnection.com. And if you haven't done so already, we'll just give you a quick reminder to be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast app or right there in the player where you're currently listening to this episode. All right. Very excited. Charlie Lindgren, goaltender for the Washington Capitals, is back. It's his annual off-season visit with Rick and I here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. As Rick mentioned at the top of the show, this kind of encapsulates part 3 of our focus on goaltenders. And we're very happy to have Charlie back on the show with us again today. You know, we covered Charlie ever since he went pro when he was signed out of St. Cloud State way back when with the Canadiens. And it's just a joy for us to get to catch up with him now that he's no longer with the Canadiens organization. We still like to catch up with him every summer. And so we chatted with Charlie about a number of things. He had a very strong season for himself in the NHL, including earning recognition as the top goaltender in the NHL for the month of December this past season. Also made one of the saves of the year in the entire league against the Boston Bruins. We're going to talk to him about that. And also going to talk to him about what he's looking forward to this new season coming up. And with that is going to come the opportunity to reunite with some very familiar faces and names from the Canadiens organizations like Joel Edmundson, like Max Pacioretty, and behind the bench, Kirk Muller is going to be in Washington as well. So we're going to talk to Charlie about all of that. And we're also, as we always do, we're going to have some fun with Mr. Lindgren as well. We're going to play a kind of a fast round of 5 questions. He's going to talk to us a bit about, he's going to let us know who was his closest friend on the Canadiens roster when he played for the Canadiens. You might be surprised at his answer. And we mentioned right before the break that our question for all of you this week is, you know, if you were NHL commissioner and could change one rule, what would it be? Well, Charlie's going to give us his opinion on that as well. Just so much to cover. This is just, it's one of my favorite guests for us to talk to, and this is a tremendous interview coming up. I know that I always say every time we're about to introduce our guest of the week here on the podcast, I always say that it's my absolute pleasure, and I genuinely say that, but it's got a little more meaning behind it on the weeks of the year that I get to say that this week I am so pleased to welcome and happy to welcome back to the show none other than Charlie Lindgren, goaltender for the Washington Capitals, and quite definitely, not even quite possibly, but quite definitely our most frequent return guest here on the Canadiens podcast, and we are always happy to have him back. Charlie, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm honored to be back on with you guys. Thank you.
Well,
thanks for the intro.
We've been so happy to follow your career for so long now, and so happy to always get to talk to you. And I know our listeners enjoy getting to catch up with you as well. It's August. It's kind of like the time of year we always do catch up with you. How's your summer been so far?
It's been great. It's been long, which is kind of unfortunate with not making the playoffs. We were done mid-April, so it's been over 3 months of summer here. So it's been busy. Like we've been, the wife and I, we spent 2 weeks out in Italy.
Wow.
Which was amazing, and we really enjoyed that experience. And yeah, we've been busy, but it's been a really good busy. So Minnesota summers, they're hard to beat. It's been fun.
So you're training in Minneapolis, in Minnesota this summer. What are you working on? Who are you training with? How's your training going this summer?
Yeah, so I'm still training at the same gym that I've been training at now for probably the last 10 years, I suppose. Gym, it's Velocity Sports, and then skate and goalie coach is Dave Rogalski, who I've worked with him for probably 12 years now. So when I say numbers like that, it makes me feel like I'm kind of getting old. But no, the skates have been going great. Just really starting to ramp up now. Now I'm skating like 3-4 times a week. So that's kind of a gradual progression throughout the summer where, usually I'll start skating sometime late June, early July, and just kind of skate once or twice a week. And now it's August, which is hard to believe, but now I'm starting to skate 3 or 4 times a week and really starting to ramp up my my on ice.
So aside from traveling, have you been doing any? You're an outdoors kind of guy, I imagine. So golf, fishing, camping. What's on Charlie Lindgren's summer reading list? All that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah. So I've had a couple golf trips. One was up in northern Minnesota in Brainerd, I guess north central Minnesota. So that was really fun. That was a weekend with all my hometown buddies. And then the weekend after that was up in Lutzen, Minnesota, which is on the North Shore of Lake Superior. And so that was really fun. That was with my brothers and my dad and then his high school buddies. So it's pretty cool. They got a really good friend group. They still get together. And then fishing, I haven't fished as much as I've wanted to. I've gotten out a couple times. I went muskie fishing a couple weeks ago with one of my really good friends.
Nice.
And his dad. And then I didn't get anything. Muskie, they're tough to, if anyone knows about muskie fishing, it's, they're the fish of every 10,000 casts. So we really got to work to get them. And then this last weekend here, I was up at the cabin in northern Wisconsin with my 84-year-old grandfather.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, me and him spent some quality time on the boat fishing on Saturday and Sunday. So that was really enjoyable getting to spend time with him. It's always a pleasure and a treat. And then I just actually finished a 860-page novel.
Wow.
Which is the biggest book I've ever read. And I've probably been working at it now I've had it for probably 3-4 months and just kind of chipping away at it. But it's called The Lonesome Dove. It's an old, I think it came out in like the mid-90s, early 90s maybe. And it's essentially an old cowboy novel where, it's a cattle group down in Texas are turned a bunch of cattle up to Montana, and it's a really cool story, filled with a lot of different emotion. So really good book. Just finished that yesterday, actually. So I feel very accomplished when you finish a book of that magnitude.
Definitely. Great book. In fact, If you haven't seen it, they then turned that into a miniseries with Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones.
I'm an hour in, so now
excellent. Yes.
I'm an hour in, so
okay.
I got to keep on. Now that's my next project is watch The Lonesome Dove on TV.
Good.
Yep.
So a well-earned, relaxing summer, as well as training after your first full season as an NHL goaltender, your first season with the Washington Capitals, your first season of a 3-year deal that you signed with them. What was that like? What was life like as an NHL goaltender, and what was it like being a member of the Capitals organization?
Yeah, well, first off, just from a living perspective, my wife and I, we really enjoyed living in the DC area. Just really good people, nothing to complain about regarding winter weather. That was really nice, very mild. So that was good. And then just the organization itself and the locker room, the guys, just really good group. A lot of good humans. It's actually a really tight-knit locker room. The problem we had last year was injuries. We couldn't shake the injury bug, and that was really tough on us. But we didn't. We probably didn't play as. We wanted to probably play more consistent hockey. I think we had our spurts last year, but it just wasn't consistent enough. And I do think injuries are partly to blame for that. But I think everyone at this point is healthy, and really looking forward to next year. Just because I think with the expectations we had last year and the roster. You look at that roster, and it was, there'd be times I'd look at the lineup and I'd be like, gosh, this team is just loaded. And then, we just missing the playoffs was really frustrating and tough. And so I think, everyone probably had a chip on their shoulder, including me, going into the summer, wanting to get back to work and make sure that we don't have that same feeling for next year.
So you mentioned injuries. One of those injuries, unfortunately, was to Darcy Kemper. But in December, and that kind of opened the door for you to get a bunch of starts in a row. You were Mr. December. You've been Mr. December the last two Decembers, both in St. Louis and Washington. You were the NHL First Star of the Week a couple of times. I'm looking at stats for goaltender. You were the best goaltender in the National Hockey League in December 2022. You had 9 wins. Both you and Jake Ettinger had 9 wins, but you did it in fewer starts, and you had a bit better save percentage and goals against, which is wild that both you and Jake, both from Lakeville, Minnesota, are setting the NHL on fire.
That's right.
But what was that like? Because there you are with a new team. You're wanting to prove yourself to your teammates, to the coaching staff, and you just rip it up in December.
Yeah, well, I look back on that time, and I was kind of coming off I had a start in New Jersey where I let in, I think, 5 goals. Jack Hughes had a hat trick, and then my next game, I think, was I did a mop-up job in Calgary when Darcy got hurt. And I let in a couple goals. And so Darcy goes down. And first off, Darcy Kemper, unbelievable human being, really, really good goalie partner. So we formed a really good bond last year.
Oh, that's good.
So when he went down, though, that was tough. I think everyone was kind of bummed out. Our next opponent was Edmonton. They were waiting for us in Edmonton. And so obviously I knew I had to, pick up the slack once Darcy went down. I had to step up. We were in a position in the standings where, if we had a tough couple weeks, we'd have pretty much no shot at making the playoffs. And so it really left me no choice. And like you were saying, I wanted to prove myself to my teammates, to the coaches, to our organization that, I can certainly play at this level and play at a high level. And so that first game in Edmonton, we played a really good game as a team, and we came up with a big win. And then I think we kind of got some momentum going. And that whole month, I benefited from a team in front of me that played their best hockey all year. We just really clicked as a team, and everyone kind of stepped up, and it was just a really, really fun month because we played awesome hockey every night. I felt like we were the best team on the ice and we deserved to win. Even the one loss I think we had was against Dallas, against Jake Ottinger. And, he stood on his head that game. We played a really good game and we ended up losing 2-1. But just a ton of fun. When hockey's going like that, when you got all the momentum going your way and the puck is like a beach ball, you're in the right spot, pucks are just hitting you. I mean, there's no better feeling than that. And I think I benefited too from, being able to play multiple games in a row. I find that when I'm playing consistently, when I'm getting in there every other night or, once every 3 nights, that's where you can really kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm. And I definitely found myself in that rhythm during that month. And so, it was awesome. It was really fun. And like you had mentioned, it's just back-to-back Decembers where, I don't know, it's just things have just been going right. So now, hopefully we can get that feeling more than just December when we get it for 6-7 months in a row or something.
Now, Canadiens fans who are listening will remember that that month ended on New Year's Eve with the Canadiens playing the Capitals. You won that game. That was your 9th win of the month, and a miserable 9-2 drubbing by the Capitals over the Canadiens. Maybe a little bit poetic.
That one also, that win when I was with St. Louis and I got that win against Montreal. I mean, that's where I feel like, because I did have some, maybe some anger, some strong emotion directed their way. And I felt like when I got that win with St. Louis, a lot of that did go away. And, now when I played them this last year, obviously I still wanted to beat them. And I have a lot of old buddies on that team still. And, they're a team that I certainly, I do respect them. And, but being able to beat them in a fashion like that certainly felt pretty good.
So one more game from last season that I just want to focus on, and that would come a few months later, and you facing the Boston Bruins, the best team, the best regular season team ever. By statistics, and it pains me to say, it really pains me to say that. But during that game, I'm going to play a clip here. This happened.
A couple of assists tonight. Bertuzzi snaking his way into the Washington territory. McAvoy right to the cage. Bang, bang. Lindgren shuffled over. Made the stop. Bertuzzi there. Feed it. Oh, look at Charlie. Oh, my God, without his glove. Did Charlie Lindgren just make a save without his glove?
I'm not sure.
I think he made a stop barehanded.
Barehanded, says Joe Benedetti. That's the Capitals broadcaster, Joe Benedetti, and former Canadiens player, Craig Laughlin there. Absolutely incredible. Phenomenal. It was a clip that was replayed around the league over and over and over again. Tell us what happened on that play.
Well, it was all kind of a blur. And that Pasternak one-timer, I caught that up high and hit me in the helmet, and that actually I sustained a concussion, so I left later that game, and that was the reason for it. I was kind of dazed, so I made that barehanded save, which thankfully didn't hit my actual hand.
Thankfully,
I did make that. I made that concussed, but
wow.
But yeah, it was quite the sequence, and certainly one that I'll never forget. Just one of those moments where, that whole game I felt really just locked in. Obviously, when the game, like you understand, you could see why Boston was so good because, gosh, they just played. I mean, they're constantly just down your throat and just so much speed, so much skill, so balanced, such a balanced attack. And so that was one of those games where I knew going in, playing in Boston, I was going to have to play well to give the team a chance to win. And I really felt like I did have a really good game. And unfortunately, I had to come out. But, Yeah, that was a sequence I'll never forget. I didn't realize how big it would become, but after the game, my phone was blowing up with a bunch of text messages. So, and just Joe's call on that too was hilarious and so good. I mean, he's gold. He's so good at calling games.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one for the books, and certainly one I'll never forget.
Well, I encourage our listeners to go back and take a look. Your glove got dislodged. You lost your trapper, and incredible.
Yeah.
And so then in after the stoppage, you tipped your mask up and went to the water. But the referee came over to you and said something and kind of had his hand on your shoulder. Do you remember at all what he said?
That's a good question. I think he probably was asking me if I was all right or something like that, because I think he could maybe tell I was a little bit dazed. And it was one of those things where it's a Pasternak one-timer.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might just get stunned, and I thought it was one of those things I could maybe shake off a little bit, but I could tell when I was in the net the next few minutes that I just wasn't feeling 100%. And then I ended up making a pretty nice, I think it was a 2-on-1 save, and my back ended up spasming on me.
Oh.
And so,
oh no.
I knew that was going to go away, but I kind of laid on the ice a little bit just to try to wait until the spasm was gone. And then my trainer came out, and I just said, hey, my back's going to be fine, but I just don't feel right in my head. And so he did the right thing. He pulled me off and went and got tested. And that was game 81 of the season. So I was out the next game as well. So that was really my first concussion I've ever had. So it was a feeling where, it was kind of foreign to me.
Yeah.
I've got hit in the head many times throughout my career, but that one just kind of felt different and kind of sat with me for a few days. But after a couple weeks or whatever it was, 10 days to 2 weeks or whatever, all good and back to normal.
We're going to have a conversation with Pasta about that for future for future.
He can shoot the puck. That's for sure.
So, looking ahead to this coming season now, what's really on Charlie Lindgren's objective list for this coming season? What are you looking to build on? What are your personal goals for this season? What's that behind what currently this year, what's your quote unquote locker room material for you to keep improving and keep moving forward?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to take another step. And so last year for me, like you guys had mentioned, it was my first full year up in the NHL for a long time, for 7 years. I think it was up and down. And finally last year I kind of solidified myself. And so, even I had a conversation with our new coach, Spencer Carberry, and I told him, last year to me, it felt like I finally got my foot in the door, and this next year, I really want to knock that door down, and I really want to go in and just take another step. And again, I feel like I still have to prove myself. I got that mindset where every time I'm in the net, I want to prove myself to myself, my teammates, organization, everyone that, I can be a guy back there that stabilizes the net and gives the team a chance to win every single night, and just, play consistent hockey, have fun with it, win a lot of games. And so, it's funny. I don't make a lot of actual goals anymore. The last time I did that was our first year, I think, in Laval. It's a funny little story. So, we had a really, really good team on paper that year in Laval. Mm-hmm. And Montreal got clobbered with injuries, so we lost a lot of guys early on that season. And so I remember telling Marco Marciano, the goalie coach in Laval, I was like, yeah, I want to win 30 games. That was kind of my goal, because, I thought we had a team that could really do it. We really were stacked. And as you guys remember, things changed quickly that year. And I think we were like the worst team in the American League that year. So
I'd have to even look if they had 30 wins as a team that year.
I think we'd be lucky if we got 20 wins that year. So really my goals now are just daily goals where it's just, let's take another step. Let's keep on, having the right mindset, and just working to get better every single day. And so, that's kind of where I set my goals. And so, I feel like it's really helped me because, it's really every day. It's either you're getting better or you're getting worse. And so I choose to want to get better. And I know when I'm getting better, that's when I'm going to give the team the best chance to win.
And that team's going to be a little bit different. You mentioned a new head coach in Spencer Carberry, a new assistant coach who you are very familiar with, and that's Kirk Muller, and a couple of former Canadians, Joel Edmundson, who should help to clear your crease a little bit, and a sniper in Max Pacioretty. Talk about some of those changes and some familiar faces that you know pretty well.
Yeah, so I mean, 3 out of those 4 guys you mentioned, I've gotten to know throughout my hockey career. I'm really excited to meet Spencer in person. I've heard amazing things. He was in the Washington organization a couple years ago, and from what I've heard, guys really like him. He's a very personable guy. And like I had mentioned earlier too, I got a chance to talk to him on the phone and had a really good conversation with him. So I'm really excited for that. And then, Kirk Muller was another guy that, I got to know pretty well up in Montreal. He was there for at least a couple of years that I was there, and just a really good human being. Again, super personable. And I think he's going to be really great for our team. He's going to mesh really well with our players. And then seeing Eddie again will be awesome. He was the guy I sat next to in Montreal during I think it was the taxi squad year. So I sat right next to him. So we formed a good bond throughout that season. Just a really good locker room guy, really good, solid defenseman, steady. So I think he's going to be big for us. And then Pacioretty, who's a guy that, I remember that would have been, I think 2017 was probably the last time that I had played with him. And so, obviously I remember his shot, how good how quick his release is, how accurate it is, just a really, really good shooter. And then just a guy too that I think he's going to be a really good leader in our locker room. He's going to be a great add for us. And once he's healthy, I don't know exactly if he's going to be ready to start right away or not, but once he's in that lineup, he's a player that can make a big difference. And so looking forward to being back with him. And he was someone that when I signed out of St. Cloud, being the new guy on the team, he was someone that really treated me right and was a really good leader. And he was the captain, obviously, in Montreal at that point, too. And so just really respect him for the way he treated me. And so really looking forward to being on a team with him again next year.
That is all very, very fun. So we want to kind of continue the fun here a little bit. We're gonna go through. They're not rapid fire questions, but just kind of like 5 questions ranging on a bunch of topics about Charlie Lindgren. And I'm going to start with something rather fun. What's playing in the truck on your way to the rink? What do you have on the radio?
Oh, boy. What's playing on the radio? Well, last year, I'm trying to think the music I was into. So I really like Riley Green a lot. He's a country singer. I was into Taylor Swift for a little bit. I like some of her newer songs. I don't know if that's embarrassing to mention or not. And then I like, I actually listen to a lot of podcasts too. So that's kind of my mix when I'm heading to a rink for practice.
Do you are you a Swiftie? Are you officially like a Swiftie?
I wouldn't say I'm a full-blown Swiftie, but I will say I like a lot of her music, and certainly she's kind of lit the world on fire this summer with that tour. It sounds like it's been I think I just saw a few days ago she was in Seattle and she created a registered earthquake. I don't know if you guys saw that, but she's obviously pretty talented. She's got some pretty good songs. So, but when I'm listening to music, I tend to definitely lean country.
A little bit of Jake Owen, something like that.
Yeah, I like Jake Owen. I like the old school stuff too. I really like Alan Jackson and George Strait. So I listen to those guys a lot.
That's
Yep.
classic
Yep. So
country,
that's
like
right up my
90s
alley.
country, 80s and 90s country is
Yeah, love 90s country.
Yeah.
Love it. Yep. Yep.
So you're a bit of a unicorn. That is a right-handed catching goaltender. Not maybe a handful in the NHL. Logan Thompson, Vamelka, I think.
Yep.
Cal Peterson. Askarov, the prospect in Nashville. Do you think that gives you an advantage for shooters who aren't maybe expecting the glove to be on that hand?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it definitely does. And I say that because I've had players tell me that. And so it just gives the players a completely different look. And so I think they're used to shooting, let's say, high or just above the pad blocker side. I mean, that's a lot of guys' favorite shot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my glove. And so I think it just, I've heard so many different guys throughout the years, tell me that it's so weird. It's so different. And I think it messes with their head a little bit. So, and obviously teams are getting really good at doing the scouting report and all that stuff. But, guys, sometimes they make the same shot on the same goalie all the time. And so a lot of goalies catch the same way, and they're used to shooting one side or the other. And so just giving them a different look, I think really, it's to my benefit.
You talked about how, you've got great experience with Kirk Muller. You had a lot of respect for Max Pacioretty being one of the first guys to reach out to you when you signed out of St. Cloud. Who was probably the player, or maybe there was more than one, but who's the player that you probably were closest with when you were with the Canadiens and maybe even keep in touch with now?
I'd say my best player, or my best friend that I formed a friendship with up in Montreal, was Brett Kulak. And he's someone I still keep in touch a good amount. Just one of the most genuine, down-to-earth human beings I've ever played with. Just a really good family man. Just he's just love his heart. And so I've stayed in close contact with him, and he's had a heck of a career here especially the last couple of years. I think he's really benefited from playing getting a lot of ice time up in Edmonton, and it's nice for him too, because it's only a couple hours from where he grew up, and I know he's loving that. So really happy for him. But he's definitely probably he's probably my best buddy that I had up in Montreal.
People who have listened to this broadcast know that I hate the trapezoid rule. I would get rid of the trapezoid if it was up to me. Which NHL rule, and it doesn't necessarily have to relate to goaltending, which NHL rule would you change if you had the power?
I mean, as a goalie, you'd have to say the trapezoid rule as well.
Get on board,
Yeah, I mean, I just remember the old days when the goalies, thinking about like Martin Brodeur or Marty Turco, they were really good at playing the puck, and they were in the corners, they were all over the place. And so I think I understand it to some extent, but, I don't know. I think it's one of those rules that I'd be fine if they forgot about that one and got rid of it. Just because and I don't think I'm the best puck handler by any means, but if there's a puck I can get to, I want to get to it and try to help out my team. And so that's for sure probably my least favorite rule. I don't like that one, and I didn't like the old 2-line pass rule either.
Yeah.
So maybe like the 2-line pass, the trapezoid will eventually leave our game.
Let's get some momentum going on that.
Yeah.
What's your favorite rink to play in, or maybe city to visit? And what's the toughest NHL rink, whether it's the crowd or the wonky boards or whatever it is? Your favorite rink and the toughest rink.
My favorite rink. So I would say I really enjoy being in Nashville. I love the experience away from the rink, just because, again, I love country music, and I think, obviously Nashville is country music. So I love being in Nashville, and I think the atmosphere at the rink is really amazing. So that's probably my favorite rink. And then the toughest rink, that's a good question. I think, maybe like Toronto, and I mean that in a good way. I actually like playing in tough rinks because I like when the crowd's into it. I feel like that's when I really feed off that. And so I've had I've been lucky, or I've got to play a few games in Toronto, and it's tough. Well, they have a really good team as well, but it's just a fun place to play, and it's another rink where you got to play well, or else the crowd's going to be all over you. So, and just like Montreal, I mean, I haven't had the chance of playing in Montreal yet as a away goalie. But again, it's similar to Toronto. I feel like, where, those Montreal fans are so passionate. They know the game of hockey, and so if you don't play well, the Habs fans, they're gonna ride you pretty good. So, but yeah, any team where they have a fun atmosphere, a good atmosphere, and they love their team. They're tough rinks to play in, but I think that brings out the best in me.
So we'll wrap up the five questions here with something on the more sentimental side. What's probably in your hockey career, what's been your fondest memory? It could be before you went pro, it could be after you went pro, but just what sticks out to you is probably your fondest memory so far in your hockey career.
Oh, I've been so fortunate. I've had so many great moments, and that's what keeps me coming back. I just love winning those big games. And I think what stands out the most, I go back to actually high school hockey and winning the section championship with my team at Lakeville North. And I think what makes that so special is it's the buddies you grew up playing with. And I had a really, really close class where we still hang out all the time together. We pushed each other because we were all so competitive. And so when we beat our crosstown rival, Lakeville South, not once but 2 years in a row as underdogs, that's probably my fondest hockey memory. Unfortunately, I haven't won a big championship yet. I got time, and I plan on doing it. So that would take the cake, because I think winning the championship, it's obviously you got to be the best team in the league, and there's a lot of teams, but yeah, I think winning the section championship in Lakeville North as underdogs against our crosstown rivals, I think those are my fondest hockey memories. And I guess I got to throw also my first NHL game. I was just coming off a really, really heartbreaking loss in college, where we had, I think at the time we were ranked number 2 in the country. And those NCAA tournaments are so tough because you lose one game and your season's done. And so we got upset at the XL Energy Center in St. Paul to a team I can't even say their name because it still bugs me that much. And then, then I had I was fortunate enough to sign with Montreal a few days later, and get my first NHL game a couple weeks later after that, where that feeling of winning my first NHL game, it was, being on the NHL ice for the first time, all the hard work, the resiliency, perseverance, all the ups and downs, the naysayers, the doubters, being able to put them aside and stepping on the ice and winning that first NHL game with my family and friends watching. That's also tough to beat. So I'd say those two are my favorite hockey memories.
And that was against the Hurricanes, I think it was in Carolina. But you were phenomenal in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It was, and they scored on their first shot, and so, that's not necessarily the way you want to start a game. But
but you'd only give up one more the entire game. Yeah.
Yeah, gave up one more, and so And I maybe have told this story on the podcast before, but Cam Moore was a goalie that I really looked up to, and I really admired the way he played. And so he was the goalie that I got to face off against too. And so that was really enjoyable. So yeah, it's been, now I'm 29, and it's fun looking back on some of those times and now I'm going into I think this is going to be my 8th full year pro, which is it's really insane when you think about it. It's just really flown by, and it makes you really cherish those moments. And really cherish every day. We're very fortunate to do what we do.
Well, you're coming into your own, and we couldn't be more happy for you, and we've loved following your career and look forward to all of your successes as they come up over the next few years.
I always appreciate your guys' support. Thanks a lot.
And hey, none of us are any older than we were when you first got signed by the Canadiens. The three of us haven't aged a single day at all.
We haven't at all. It doesn't feel like it, at least.
Yeah,
that is true. Well, Charlie Lindgren, thank you so much. We always appreciate that you take some time out of your busy summer schedule to chat with us and catch up with us. And you can guarantee that we'll be following all of your adventures with the Capitals this coming season. And we wish you so much success this year.
You guys are the best. Thank you.
Well, that was a terrific interview, and we always appreciate having Charlie Lindgren on the show, on the Canadiens Connection. It usually happens in August. Why Charlie Lindgren? Why Charlie Lindgren instead of one of the Canadiens goaltenders? Well, for a number of reasons. Number one, it's tradition.
Yes, it is.
This has become an annual event for the past 3-4 years. He's just a captivating person to talk to. He has experienced hockey at all different levels and has a really good perspective on things. As you said, he had a terrific season with the Washington Capitals and a number of periods of recognition during the year. There is the connection, the Canadiens connection there, so we like to have him on. But lastly, and maybe most importantly, is yes, this show is to primarily to focus on the Montreal Canadiens. But if you've been listening for any time, you know that we also like to feature compelling stories from good people in hockey.
That's right.
And Charlie Lindgren, if you've ever met him, is one of the best people we've ever met in hockey. Mm-hmm. And we always glad to talk to him, and he always has time for us and great stories.
Absolutely. So thanks again to Charlie Lindgren. We wish him the best of luck in the upcoming season. Can't wait to see what kind of highlight reel calls Joe Beninati's going to have with Lindgren in the crease this year. All right, we are going to take our final break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Up next, we've got your question of the week coming. We're going to get you caught up on some things that you might have missed. We've got another great actual interview coming up with a very special guest. So you get not one, but 2 interviews on today's episode. So you don't want to miss any of that. But first, we're going to hear from our sponsors, the good fine folks over at Raycon Audio. They are back with a special incentive for Canadiens Connections listeners this month. So stay with us. Check that out. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
It's summertime, and it means that, of course, it's music listening time, whether you are chilling at the beach or at the lake or at the cottage, even in your backyard, out for a walk or a jog, or driving and cruising with the windows down or the top down if you're lucky enough to have a convertible. It is summer music season. What have you got playing on your favorite summer playlist right now? I've been listening to a lot of classic rock, a lot of 70s and 80s. Even if you're not going on vacation, summer is all about that vacation state of mind. And so whether you want to listen to those favorite tunes on repeat or you just need to retreat inside your own head for a little bit, it's so much fun to create your own summer soundtrack. And I like to do that by popping in my Raycon wireless earbuds. There's just so much going on all summer, and sometimes you need some upbeat music to just pump you up before you go out and hit the beach beach with some friends, or head over to a family barbecue, or maybe you want to relax a little bit with some calmer music, guided meditation. No matter what it is, if you're taking your earbuds on the go with you, maybe to the gym, like I said, out for a jog or a walk, or maybe you're just relaxing at home and you want some great tunes. I love to listen to music while I'm in the kitchen working, whether I'm cleaning or whether I'm cooking, baking, that kind of thing. So let me tell you, having your Raycon wireless earbuds is a great way to do that. They are the best way to listen to your music. You can use the earbud tap functions to toggle between 3 customizable sound profiles, noise isolation, and awareness mode, which allows some environmental sounds in so that you can still kind of hear what's going on around you if you want. Raycons have a 32-hour battery life, including 8 hours of playtime, so you can really listen to what you want, when you want, for a really long time. They come with custom gel tips for the most comfortable in-ear fit. That's a big one for me. In-ear earbuds and gel tips are typically difficult to fit inside my ear so that they fit and stay in my ear. Have not had an issue with my Raycons at all. And they start at just half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good, if not better. Raycons come with a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. So you can create your own soundtrack with Raycon. And right now, Canadiens Connection listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/THPN. Really, this is an incentive just for listeners of the Canadiens Connection. We want you to take advantage of this offer. So again, that's buyraycon.com/THPN to save 15% on Raycons. buyraycon.com/THPN.
And welcome back to episode 255 of the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit our website at canadiensconnection.com. And of course, don't forget, you can text us anytime at the Rocket Sports text line. That's 585-3-ROCKET. And of course, in our third segment, we always like to let you have your say. But before we hear from you, let's give you what you need to know from Rocket Sports. Of course, we've mentioned it a couple of times this episode, but Rick, really the place to find all of fans' coverage of the Montreal Canadiens, Habs prospects, the Laval Rocket, even the Trois-Rivières Lions in the ECHL. There's one place to do that from, and that's at the new Hockey News Montreal team site.
That's thn.com/Montreal. And fascinating to see the Hockey News tweeting this week their photo, their layout from their upcoming issue of all 32 team sites. And while some of the other coverage, other sports coverage is going away, the Hockey News is expanding. We've been with the Hockey News since May. And we are, the Rocket News, that is, our Rocket Sports is responsible for the news and all the content you see on thn.com/Montreal. And as you said, whatever it is, whether it's prospect news, whether it's news about the Canadiens, it's all in one place this season. So make sure you bookmark it, thn.com/Montreal.
Also, be sure you have subscribed to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/allhabs. And you get a couple of things when you do that. First of all, there are some people, you're listening to this podcast right now, probably on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify or Apple Music or Google Podcasts or whatever it may be. However, you might also be someone who's listening to this podcast on YouTube, and that is because this podcast, once it comes out on Saturday afternoons, we then also post a video version of the podcast on the YouTube channel for our audience on YouTube to tune in and listen to the podcast that way as well. And there's also, of course, the show that I host every week called Habs Hockey Report. That is a shorter format show that comes out usually every Thursday, where I give you some reactions and some opinions and some analysis on hot topics surrounding the Montreal Canadiens. It's usually a lot of fun, and it's another great way to reach out to all of our fans and followers. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/allhabs. Don't forget to tap the notification bell so that you always get notified when we post a new video. And of course, be sure, as we mentioned, to subscribe to both of our Rocket Sports Radio podcasts on your favorite podcast app. That would be this one, The Canadiens Connection, which you can find at canadiensconnection.fm. Perhaps you missed parts 1 and 2 of the goaltending series that we've done in the last couple of weeks, talking to Sean Richardson at FC Hockey or talking to Marty Biron. So if you want to catch up on anything, we've got the full archive at canadiensconnection.fm. And the same goes for The Press Zone, which is the Laval Rocket and AHL-centric podcast that I host every Tuesday. You can find that at thepresszone.fm. And we want to be sure that you subscribe to both of those podcasts so that you never miss any of our great content. Speaking of our team and our great content that we've got going on here, Rick, it's all, I've been part of the Rocket Sports team since, I feel old. Weren't we just saying that with Charlie, that it's been all these years? And no, we're not, none of us are any older, but I've been with the team since 2009. And it's really tremendous team. And we've got some really tremendous teammates, and some of them have been around pretty much as long as I have.
That's right. And one of those is our good friend Brian. Brian is the commissioner for our Rocket Sports fantasy sports leagues, both fantasy hockey, fantasy football, which is getting together now. And listen, if you're looking for a fantasy football league to join, none better. We have 3 fantasy football leagues on the Yahoo platform, and you'll be able to connect with other Canadiens fans, other hockey fans, and be competitive as well. And Brian also is a longtime Montreal Canadiens fan. He does a great job, and it's always good to chat with Brian about other sports, about the Montreal Canadiens, and about him growing up in Montreal as a Canadiens fan.
Thanks, guys. And I would like to welcome Brian, our Rocket Sports contributor, to the show. How are you doing today, Brian?
Doing great. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice to have you back in the studio. It's been a little while, and it's going to be fun to get to know you a little bit. Starting things off, I'm just curious, how did you join Rocket Sports, and what sort of stuff are you doing to contribute?
Well, I run the fantasy leagues, hockey and football, and it was kind of funny how it got started. I had been chatting with Rick, and for the most part, it was hockey conversation. And I had no idea that he was a pretty diehard, devoted Minnesota Vikings fan. So we sort of just happened to get on a football thread, and I said, "Wow, you're more than just hockey, aren't you?" And he says, "Oh, we're a multi-sport entity," and things just went from there. And it's been some 13 years now.
So you mentioned that you run all the fantasy leagues. How does that work?
Well, the football leagues, we have a few leagues, and with the listeners as well. And they are head-to-head leagues in both the hockey and the football. And you have an opponent every week, and we do a little friendly smack talking, and that's it. It's good fun. It's good fun, and it's been going on a long time. I've got my son involved now. Time flies.
Did you grow up a Habs fan? How did you pick up the Montreal fandom in general?
I did, and I have to tell people all the time. I live in Burlington, Ontario, and I tell people all the time, I'm not just being a wise guy here. Just wants to be difficult. It's been some 50 years I've been rooting for the Habs, and I'm giving away a little bit of my age there. But I actually can remember Maurice Richard's Series Cup winning goal in 1971, very vaguely. So it goes way back. It was pretty much a way of life. I couldn't root for another team.
That's pretty awesome.
It goes pretty deep. Yeah.
Yeah, especially out in Burlington, Ontario. I'm sure there's a lot of Leaf fans out there, isn't there?
Oh yeah, it's glorious to be right in the heart of Leaf Nation with some of the chaos that's been going down lately.
Yeah, exactly. So did you pick up your fandom like from one of your parents, or was this a completely original decision by you?
Yeah, no, it was family. It might have been, if anybody, it would have been my sister. And we were fortunate enough to get to quite a few games back in the day, thanks to some connections that my dad had. And my sister would go to some and come home, with absolutely no voice left. And so I might have gotten it a little bit from her, but it was just in the area, everybody was a Habs fan, So except for my dad, of course, he back in the day, he said, it's a foregone conclusion that Canadians are going to win. So I'm just going to have to take the opposition. So,
but you mentioned your Habs fandom going back a long time. Have you picked up any cool Habs memorabilia along the way?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I used to write to hockey players all through the league. Congratulations on this goal, this stat, and your first goal, and so on. And I used to ask for an autographed picture, and so I've got quite a few. I've got Guy Lafleur's autographed picture. I've actually got a Guy Lafleur Titan autographed stick, which is a pretty good one.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Actually, kind of a cool side note here. My dad used to write letters to the Montreal Canadiens when he was younger too, and whenever he'd ask for like, "Oh, can I have like this person's hockey card or whatever?" And they were always great about sending it back to him, right? So
they really were. Many were. It's I can't think of too many that didn't. I do have a cool side note to that. Is one player who didn't ever write back for the longest time. It was Ken Dryden, and my sister was a huge fan of Ken Dryden, and she wrote him a letter one day and just ripped into him. And one summer day, I was out playing, and I hear my dad calling, and I can still hear his voice in the back of my head, and I just ignored it. He wanted me to come home. Apparently there was somebody on the phone for me. And lo and behold, it was Ken Dryden, who felt like a really nitwit for not following up on my letters. And so I spent a couple of hours saying, "No, you're joking. No, you're just trying to make me feel bad. This is just to make sure that I come home next time I'm called." But yeah. So, and then, fast forward, some 40 years later, that story got back to Ken Dryden fairly recently, and we chatted a couple of years ago. He called me. So, make the circle complete.
Wow, that's actually an incredible story. I guess you finally did get through to him in the end. Too bad he didn't respond to you earlier, but it kind of worked out.
Yeah, well, he didn't recall it, obviously, but yeah, he said, "Wow, your sister's dogged determination." He's got that deep voice. Even at my age, it was pretty intimidating. That voice on the other end, it was hard to believe.
Yeah, that's actually an incredible story, and interesting to hear about all your memorabilia as well. You must have quite the collection there. That's pretty amazing. I'm sure a lot of Habs fans out there are pretty jealous of you right now. You know what? Thank you very much for lending your time and joining us here. It was good to get to know you, Brian. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Big thanks to Michael Spinella for sitting down with Brian to talk about his memories, talk about why he's been a member of Rocket Sports for the past 13 years, and all of his passions as a sports fan. Great interview. So thanks again to Michael Spinella and Brian for that.
That Ken Dryden, I've heard his Ken Dryden story before, but every time he adds a little something and a terrific story. If you're a fan, you want to hear Brian's story. Interesting, as I said, Brian's a Canadiens fan. We mentioned on the Canadiens Connection a couple weeks ago that Arber Xhekaj and his brother Florian would be making a public appearance. Well, Brian and his son Jordan went down and met Arber and Florian Xhekaj last weekend. And I think Brian's comment was, "Wow, he's a big boy." Yeah. Talking about Arber. But they had a picture. Jordan's favorite player is Arber Xhekaj. So heard on the Canadiens Connection that opportunity, and Brian and his son followed through.
That's tremendous. We love to hear that. We also love to hear from all of our listeners, and of course, the Canadiens Connection question of the week. We want to hear from you. Which NHL rule would you change if you were commissioner for a day? We heard what Charlie Lindgren would change. Rick, you mentioned what you would change. I think everyone who listens to this podcast knows what you would change. But what would you change if you had the opportunity and you could just write let's call it an executive order that I'm signing on the dotted line. This is the rule that's either changing or getting deleted or getting added. What would it be? Be sure you text us at 585-3ROCKET or leave a comment on Twitter or Facebook, and we'll be fascinated to hear what you have to say. We have heard from some of you regarding some of our more recent content, and we've got 2 comments actually. One from our YouTube page and one from Facebook regarding last week's Canadiens Connection episode. That's episode 254. And that is the episode in which we've mentioned where special guest Sean Richardson was on the show, the head goaltending scout for FC Hockey. Rick, you had a couple of great comments in particular from that episode.
Philip from Victoria, BC via YouTube says, "This is good stuff. Thanks, Sean." Straight and simple.
Yeah.
And he appreciated last week's podcast about the goaltending pipeline for the Montreal Canadiens. From Facebook, it's Darren in Bowmanville. And Bowmanville, like Brian talked about being a Habs fan in Ontario, Bowmanville is just east of Oshawa. Darren wrote, "An awesome guest. I was blown away by the detail in his scouting reports. You guys have amazing connections. Keep it up."
Nice.
And we are the Canadiens Connection. We've been doing this a very long time. We do know a lot of people in hockey, and Sean Richardson just had a lot of detail about goaltending prospects that may be new to you in the Canadiens organization. And gave you kind of a forecast, what they're good at, what they need to work on, and a forecast. So if you missed that episode, go to CanadiensConnection.fm and look for episode 254.
Because, it's August, it's a slower month, it's the perfect time to catch up on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Take us with you wherever you go. If you're at the cottage, if you're at the beach, if you're on the boat fishing, if you're camping, if you're on a road trip, it's so easy to take us along with you. Gives you something great and fun and entertaining to listen to while you're relaxing and enjoying your summer. And our next episode, of course, will be next Saturday, August 12th. Michael Spinella will be back in the hosting chair. I just kept it warm for him this week. He'll be back with us next week on the show with Rick. Rick, thanks so much for having me on the show this week. It was definitely a ton of fun. I was very glad to be back.
Always great having you here, and especially for the annual Charlie Lindgren segment.
I couldn't miss the annual Charlie Lindgren appearance. Don't forget, of course, to be sure to follow us at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't forget to text us anytime if you have a comment or a question on the Rocket Sports text line at 585-3ROCKET. And just thank you so much for always tuning in to the Canadiens Connection podcast. And we'll see you back here again next Saturday for another exciting episode of the show right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.